Week 2 of the college football season is in the books. And that means we have some movers and some shakers. We have some new faces in new places in our top 10 quarterback rankings for the 2025 NFL draft class. We're going to discuss this and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast covering your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parsons. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. You know I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at TheTalentCode. Keep talking to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ, man, and the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, where we bring you championship level content each and every single day. Man, I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. DP, college football week 2 recap, talking draft prospects. Man, we're going to start this thing off with QB rankings, right? How high did Jalen Milroe elevate himself with that gutsy performance against UCF? Then money makers and bag fumblers, right? Who made themselves some money and elevated up draft boards, and then who flat out fumbled the bag and their arrow was punted down? And then you're going to see a guest appearance from Coach K. Coach DP, we hopping in the locker room and we're passing out game balls. DP, let's get to it.
Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code, all lowercase, LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Keith, this was, when I made the list and I made the graphic for the list, it was so difficult because guys are in spots based off of not just how they play, but how their counterparts played. Shedeur Sanders has been QB1 for us this entire time. Do I think that he's going to be QB whatever on this list come April? No. But the game on this weekend did not fare well for him, and not really his fault, more so that offensive line is atrocious. But Carson Beck, for the list I put together, Keith, Carson Beck is at 1. Quinn Ewers, which we'll get into in a second, 2 back-to-back years. Bama last year, this year Michigan, he showed up and showed out. Number 3, Cam Ward from Miami. Number 4, Miller Moss from USC. Number 5, your boy Garrett. Keith, I'm telling you right now, Garrett Nussmeier. All right, listen, people better pay attention because Garrett Nussmeier is out there balling right now. Number 6, Jackson Dart. Got to have a conversation about him in a second. Milroe is at 7. Shedeur is at 8. Drew Allen is at 9. And I think first-time appearances, Will Howard on my list from Ohio State, Keith.
Yeah, where do you want to start, right? Like, because there's a lot of shakeup, and I think it's important that we put it in context, right? It's based off of what most recent performance, right? Yeah. And just what they were able to do. We talked about Jalen Milroe before. I want to talk about him now, DP, because he was top 3, top 4, and then now he's at 7. So I think it's important that we have that conversation real quick about where he sits now.
Yeah, I think with Jalen Milroe, he hasn't played poorly, right? He hasn't played bad or anything like that. Like, this isn't a Jalen Milroe's falling off the face of the earth type situation. It's guys are playing just better than him at this particular moment. And when you look at what, Quinn Ewers and Cam Ward bursting onto the scene, Carson Beck has just been, out of everybody, Carson Beck has been steady Eddie. He hasn't made no crucial mistakes. He hasn't turned the ball over. He's just dotting the I's, crossing the T's. He's being the point guard for Georgia, right? He's taking care of business. And, when I look at, Miller Moss and Garrett Nussmeier, those are the 2 guys that I'm high on right now. Miller Moss, the performance against LSU last week, he, doubled down, had a really good, a good performance. I think Utah State and everything in week 2. But Garrett Nussmeier, the arm talent, the ability to throw from different platforms, different arm angles, the accuracy and ball placement. For some reason, LSU does not have a run game right now, and it didn't really matter because Garrett Nussmeier, it feels like he doesn't need one. Like, unlike some quarterbacks that need to play action, he's out there. I think he went 27 to 37, 6 touchdowns, like 300 yards or something like that this past weekend. Like, he's just been balling. Jackson Dart, and I'm gonna say this, Ole Miss fans, like, yes, I moved Jackson Dart up, for you guys. But understand something. Until we get to SEC play, like he's not moving into the top 5, top 4, anywhere like that for me. Because what I've bought into him the past 2 seasons, and what has happened? He get into the SEC play, he gets against good competition, and he's not been consistent in those moments. That for me is a big step for him. So with Jackson Dart, he's played well. He had 2 cupcake games, right? Now let's see what happens when we get into this SEC play and you playing real defenses. Can you keep this up? Of course, Jalen Milroe being the dual threat, just dynamic playmaker he is. Shedeur is not going to – I don't expect to see Shedeur at 8 again, but just didn't have a good week. Drew Aller is getting ready to start. He's probably going to start climbing if he could continue to string together performances. And a dark horse, I'm telling you now, Will Howard at Ohio State, the 6'5", 240-pound rocket arm quarterback. He's getting chemistry with the Emeka Egbuka now after this weekend. I think 100 yards for Emeka. Big day from Jeremiah Smith. He starts trusting all the rest, Cardinal Tate and Brandon Ennis, all those young receivers, and he gets that full grasp of this offense. Man, this Ohio State offense with Travion and Quinshawn in the backfield, good luck stopping these guys, Keith. But I want to go to Texas. I want to go to Quinn Ewers real quick. Quinn Ewers going out there and in this game against Michigan, 24-36, 246, 3 touchdowns. He should have had 4 because they called one back on the ticky-tack holding penalty, I think, on their opening drive. And then I think they missed the field goal. So it's like they didn't even score. But he was locked in, Keith. How we run this locked on in the federal, he was locked in. And so for me, like I ended up having to put him at 2. I was highly impressed. Now stay healthy. Don't get hurt again this year and just keep this going. Because if he does, Keith, he's going to put himself in that top 10 type of range, not for quarterbacks, but for the entire draft of 2025.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. DP, well, let's go on, man. We about to move on to what money makers and bag fumblers, and I'm going to tell you why a running back stole the show yesterday. Coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Do you want to play PrizePicks alongside Drewski, the comedian, rapper and podcaster Joe Budden, and MMA champion Sugar Sean O'Malley? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each and every week. PrizePicks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. Play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. What's something that you'd love to learn as an adult that you don't make time for? Are you making time to learn new things as often as you'd like? Or was that lost in your childhood? Guys, whether it's gardening, a new language, or maybe finally being your best friend in NCAA 25, bowling, or golfing, understand that your back-to-school era can come at any age, and therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder. It's very simple, guys. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Money makers and bag fumblers, Keith, aka stock up, stock down. For those who are new to the show, Keith, you said a running back stole the show this past weekend. Feel like there was a couple of them, but who you picked?
DP, in a valiant effort where I disagreed with play calling down the stretch, Ashton Jeanty against Oregon was close to stealing the show, DP. Flat out stealing the show. He had 25 rushes for 190 yards. If that was 29 rushes, DP, you'd have had over 200 yards, and they would have won the game. 4 more rushes in key moments. I thought that watching it in the game, first of all, if I could just hit the little and rewind, right? I thought that when the Big Ten moved, well, when some of these schools like Oregon and USC moved to the Big Ten, I thought that would have eliminated the late games. I thought they would have played earlier, right?
Absolutely
But
not.
you had this Oregon Boise State matchup I was
Big
tired.
10 after dark, Keith. That's
Yeah,
what they
and
call it.
I didn't think that was gonna transition, DP. I thought we was done. I thought we was gonna, you know what? Let's play them earlier. I thought that's what's gonna happen, DP, but it did not happen. And I was up late last night struggling, you know what I'm saying? But it was such a good game, Oregon and Boise State. And I was watching Ashton Jeanty take over a game. And it's rare that we say we always say quarterbacks dominated or they won the game or the reason why they won, right? Or we might throw it to a wide receiver. It's rare that we give running backs that credit. Ashton Jeanty was winning that game by himself, flat out by himself. It was a dominant performance, money maker in the sense of the fact of I didn't have him as a supplanted first round guy, but I'm just ready to say that guy is different. He deserves to be in the conversation. He deserves to be in the top 3, right? And right now, my top 3 is Amarian Hampton, Quinshawn Judkins, and him. And I think he really made himself money because that was a flat out difference maker performance. I'm watching the guy, reminding me of Dalvin Cook moving out there. And you know what it is? It's the contact balance, DP. Like he absorbs contact so well and just stays in balance and is able to continue moving. Like it's so many broken tackles, and I don't know how he does it. But definitely Ashton Jeanty for me was a money maker and a valiant. Like he would have obviously won the game ball if they won the game. But I would say this: he had 25 rushes. If it was 29 and they ran him down this stretch more instead of trying to pass it and outthink the situation, Boise State would have won that game.
Yeah, no, I mean, what he's done in 2 games, 459 yards rushing. He's averaging 10.2 yards per carry. He has 9 rushing touchdowns in 2 weeks. And you talk about the missed tackles and the contact balance, Keith. He averaged almost 5 yards, almost 4.5. I'm sorry, yards after contact on this on Saturday night, and he had 9 more missed tackles forced. And he's definitely he fits the mold of today's modern offense in terms of run scheme. With this Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan West Coast wide stretch run game, he fits that to a T. The patience, the footwork, the ability to negotiate pressure, quick jump cuts to evade guys. Like it, and I mean I tweeted it out yesterday. My guy Kyle Manungai over at Rutgers, because Rutgers doesn't have a quarterback either, and they're, it's Rutgers. Nobody's watching Rutgers like that. Him and Ashton Jeanty are like almost the exact same size, and they play so similar. And it's like to see they just keep that Austin Eckler, Blake Corum vibe going, man, at the running back position. And I love to see it, especially in the running back class where you have big body guys, right? You know what I mean? From Omarion Hampton being 5'11", 220, Quinshawn Judkins being 5'11", 215. You got, Ollie Gordon at 6'2", 230. Like, there's a lot of big backs in this class potentially. And for these smaller, shorter stature guys to be cooking the way they're cooking, it's just NFL teams. Again, I said it. We said it 2 years ago, Keith. Well, last draft. 2023 when we started this pod. We're going to see how the NFL really feels about running backs with Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson. Well, they drafted them both top 15, right? Then they drafted Zach Charbonnet top of the 2nd round. Well, Keith, we got another class. So we're going to see exactly how they feel about running backs, because I can see some running backs go. I can see a heavy day 2 run on running backs, because that's just how loaded it is. And speaking of running backs, Keith, for me, Jaquindon Jackson. Talk about Ollie Gordon. Arkansas lost that game because they're super undisciplined. Like, they had no business losing that game. Just bad, like, just untimely penalties and different things like that. But Jaquindon Jackson had himself a day, Keith, where I was just sitting there watching him, and I tweeted this out. I was like, all right, we know that any scouts that are there for that Arkansas Oklahoma State game, we know that they're there. If they're watching running backs, they're watching Ollie Gordon. That's what they came for. They may have came for Ollie Gordon, but they stayed for Jaquindon Jackson. 24 carries, a $149 on the ground, 6 yards per. He had 3 rushing touchdowns, and he was battling some little bit of injuries throughout the game, cramping, and he stayed in the game. And when you could tell when he wasn't in, the run game looked a little different. Him and Taylor Green, that's a dangerous duo back there. And stock up for him, that quarterback. They give him all the reps and everything like that. This is a guy we're gonna be talking about for the 2026 draft. But Jaquindon Jackson had himself a big day, Keith. I got another running back though from Penn State.
Yep.
Nick Singleton. Nick Singleton is like, Keith, sitting here watching Nick Singleton this season, I'm happy. Right, this was a guy we both liked a lot from summer scouting. 6 foot, 227, another one of those kind of bigger, more NFL prototype backs. And back-to-back weeks of 13 carries, 114 plus yards. He had 13 carries, 119. He averaged 9 yards per carry. He had a rushing touchdown. Also, on this one lone target was one reception for 14 yards, and it was for a touchdown. So, excuse me. When I tell you, like, Keith, he's averaging 9 yards per carry on the season right now, Nick Singleton. So we've seen the big playmaking, the speed, the power, the contact balance. I'm excited to see just Drew Allen's playing well. They're getting the ball out there to their weapons. Listen, I think they got Ohio State in a couple weeks. That could be that's gonna be a must watch game for me when that week comes on, when that game is on the schedule.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and that could be DP talking about a big time situation, right? It can definitely be that, and I think it's going to be fun at the end of the day. DP, I'm looking at this, right, looking at the schedule and talking about guys that didn't necessarily perform well, and my guy is going to be, once again, I'm gonna go back to back. I had to go Donovan Smith, DP, from Houston, and I know that you talked about him a lot preseason, and he played better yesterday, right? Yeah. But I think this is consecutive weeks where he played is okay the right word? Well, he played solid football, not Superman.
He was awful in week 1. Like, he was terrible in week 1.
Yeah, and I thought yesterday was okay, but I thought their head coach, Brent Venables, the head coach for Oklahoma, I'm sorry, his post-game conference, he was not happy. And he was not happy because Oklahoma played bad football. Like, he was just flat out like, yeah, we played to lose. Like, he's like, and we deserve to lose. And I was like, wow.
Yeah,
okay.
I saw that quote.
That was very blunt. And so that's why I can't necessarily give Donovan Smith all the credit. Also, it's just, just the expectation of more, right? Like, you're going to, Houston. Obviously, I think he lost his 2 best playmakers in Matthew Golden and Sam Brown, right? Yeah, yes. Yeah, which his 2 best wide receivers, but just the physical profile that I know that you talked about, you liked them a lot, and then it's just back-to-back weeks of not performing great. So I'm gonna just say this, that it's kind of trending downward, right? As entering the season, it was trending upward.
Yeah, I mean, and like you said, he played much better in this game than he did last week. He was 24-28, 260 yards passing, 86% completion, but the 2 sacks were bad. And then he threw an interception again. And it's like, this was a game you should have won, because Jackson Arnold and that passing game is not in sync right now for Oklahoma. And that's why Brent Venables is saying what he's saying. We played to lose. We deserve to lose, because when you have the playmakers they have, even without Nick Anderson being out there, like, Oklahoma has way too many playmakers for this to keep going, right? So, yeah, 100%, Keith. I think for him, he's got to figure out, and just, this was a step in the right direction. You got to cut the turnovers down. I think he had 2 turnovers last week. He had another one, this past weekend. Got to fix that. Keith, the guy that I think his stock is plummeted for me, and that's Riley Leonard from Notre Dame, Keith. Like, he wasn't impressive in the physical matchup that was the Texas A&M win, right? They won by 10 points. But let's be honest, if the Texas A&M and their quarterback in that game, I keep forgetting.
Connor Wegman.
Connor Wegman, if he plays competent football, Keith, Notre Dame loses and they start the season 0-2. You're at home against Northern Illinois, right? NIU, you're
Yep.
home against the Huskies, and you go 20 of 32, 163 yards passing, 62.5% completion. Keith, he has 0 passing touchdowns through 2 games, and he threw 2 picks in this game with a QBR finish of 25.8. Riley Leonard, and I understand it's a new system. You transfer from Duke. Listen, you going over there, you gave all of the Fighting Irish fans hope that they had a quarterback. They do not have that hope right now because you have not proven that. And this has been a very ugly performance to start the season. And I just think that this is a kid that let me see. He's a senior, so I don't even think he has eligibility left to come back for another year and give it a go. This is your last hurrah. You need to figure out what's going on and rectify it.
Yeah, DP, I'll say this, that because we even talked about him last year or something, right? Because there was a lot of hype because I think they beat Clemson and they were on a high. I can't remember until they played like maybe Notre Dame or Florida State or something like that, right? Like, you know, they were rolling at Duke and things like that. But when I got into the film, I was like, okay, from a passing perspective, there's a lot missing. And I think yesterday that exposed itself, right? And you just can't do that against NIU, right? And I think Riley Leonard is such a tricky evaluation because it's what is he, right? Like you want to put him as a dual threat, but I don't think he's an elite runner, right? No. But passing wise, having him throw the football, he's not an elite accuracy guy. So what do you do with that, right? And I think that kind of, you've seen that a little bit of that Duke, right? Like he was just running around making it, like he's more of a gamer than what he is a quarterback right now. And there's still some things that will be developed. It's still early on, but I think one of the announcers hit it right on the head, right? Is that, hey, I believe that the OC for Notre Dame was the OC for LSU last year, and that you have to figure out what his strengths are. And I don't know if he knows. I don't know, just anything, right? They have to figure that out though, because it's not Jaden Daniels, right? He's not Jaden Daniels. So asking him to throw the slot fade on the money every single time. There's not Malik Neighbors out there. There's not a Brian Thomas out there. So you have to figure out what does he do best and how does he operate the offense. But yeah, I'm right there with you. There's no excuse to lose to NIU at the end of the day. But DP, I'm waiting for Coach DP to make appearance, man. Coach K is coming back, and we're handing out the game balls, DP, to the best performances of week 2 of college football.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Guys, I'm telling you right now, that's one of the more annoying things about looking for tickets and finding the right tickets is you got to search through to find the deal that you want. But with Game Time, first of all, one of my favorite features is that they show the seats for all show the views for all the seats in the venue. So before you purchase your ticket, you know which vantage point you or your family will have. They have lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and more. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Keith, it's Coach K's walking into the locker room, Keith. I'm not giving out 2 game balls this week. I did that week 0 and I did it week 1 last week. I'm not doing it again. I'm giving it to one person. But, everybody loves the underdog story. And this guy is putting himself in position to be the ultimate underdog. And that's Syracuse quarterback, Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord, who last year when you had Emeka Egbuka and all those talented receivers at Ohio State, I'm going to be honest with you, he looked like an undraftable prospect. Mm-hmm. Now, as a lot of times, Keith, as you know, just transitioning and changing venues and landing spots can do a world of a difference. 69.6% completion, 381 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns against Georgia Tech, a team that was undefeated, ranked, I think, 23rd coming into that game, and Syracuse won that matchup. He looks confident. he looks like he's playing within himself. I think they had a big third down late in that game where if they don't convert, they give the ball back to Haynes King, and Georgia Tech with a chance to go down and win the game. Either tie it with a field goal or win it. He converted that third down with a nice pass, first down. The connection between him and the tight end Oronde Gadsden is a legitimate connection. Like those guys, same wavelength, same page. He looks more accurate. The ball placement's better right now. Now, don't get me wrong. It's Georgia Tech. Like Georgia Tech has played respectable up to this point. What happens when you get deeper into, I think that Syracuse is in the ACC. What happens when you get deeper into the conference play and different things like that? You see a Clemson defense, right? And and whatnot. So I'm holding out hope because I want to say, okay, is this? I don't want to listen. I've bought in too quickly on guys before, and it's been fool's gold. I'm not trying to have that happen to me again. You know what I mean? So you got North Carolina State, you got Miami at the end of the season, you got Boston College defense, Virginia Tech. We'll see what happens with them. They do got a little bit of a cakewalk schedule, but they have some tough opponents scattered about. 2 or 3 games that could go either way. But yeah, when I look at Kyle McCord, man, he looks like a different dude this year, and I want to give him his love, give him the game ball because he's playing well at a high level.
DP, you still scarred from Jackson Dart last year, baby. You still scarred from Jackson Dart last year. But I get it. Take it slow. Just allow them to tell you who they are, right? As prospects. Right. That's always my motto. DP, I'm going to the trenches, baby. And you say you're not giving out more than one game ball. I'm gonna have to take this game ball and split it into 5 because I'm giving it to the Texas offensive line. We said they were gonna be the key to the game. They were the key to the game, DP. You're talking about dealing with 2 not even probably first round picks. I have them as 2 top 30 players, right? You're talking about Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant. We knew that game was going to be close if those 2 guys could dominate. And you shift the meter to they can probably dominate, right? Because they're unstoppable players. Well, they were stoppable, right? Texas got after them. They were able to block them. They were able to run the ball against them. They were able to pass protect long enough, DP, and they flat out showed out. And it was an interior offensive line that nobody discussed, right? We talked about Kelvin Banks, but I'm talking about the center Jake Majors, right? You're talking about Campbell at the guard position. Nobody talked about those guys, and those guys came flat out ready to play football, and they were DP the single-handedly why they won this game, right? They exposed Michigan as far as their offensive woes that guess what? You can't beat us in a 10-3 matchup or a 10-7 where you can muddy it up, right? Like, nah, they got after it. And it was at one point, and that's the worst position to be in as a defense. Whatever Texas was calling was working. It didn't matter what they were calling. They could have called a trick play. They were calling bubble screens, wide receiver screens, inside zone, outside zone, play action, bootlegs, whatever play they called. It was that stretch. I believe it was like a third quarter stretch, I think. And it was just whatever we call was working. Right? Penalty, don't worry about it. 2nd and 15, we'll figure it out. Right? And they were just getting the job done. So I'm giving it to that Texas offensive line, DP. That was a great performance. That was a welcome to the SEC, that we're in the SEC and we're ready to play these guys. Y'all forgot to mention us when we talk about the national championship. Y'all keep talking about Ohio State and Georgia. Y'all forgot to mention our name. That was one of those type of performances.
No, it really was, Keith. And the whole, only defensive lineman that had success was Mason Graham. I think he had like 2 pressures. He had a QB hit attack. Kenneth Grant was quiet. The big nose tackle who could do basically everything. He was quiet. Like Quinn Ewers, the way he moved the pocket, the space they gave him to move in the pocket, and the confidence he played with. Like, granted, shout out to Quinn. He didn't target Will Johnson. You know what I mean? He stayed away from that guy. That was smart.
Mm-hmm.
Tack the middle of the field. Tack those linebackers. Tack those safeties. Make guys play. And especially when you got a defense that's going to be gassed, if you can matriculate the ball down the field, have longer drives, and their offense is going to go 3 and out or turn the ball over and give it back to you, you got to cash in those opportunities. And like you said, Keith, and I love what you said, that was a performance of y'all. You guys did not talk about us as national championship and playoff contenders. They got UTSA coming up next. They got UL Monroe the following week. Then Mississippi State, who lost, to, I think, Arizona State or something like that. And then they got Oklahoma, who doesn't look good right now. And then they have Georgia, who I personally believe is beatable because they should have lost to Clemson if Clemson could have done anything effective on offense in week 1, right? The way that their defense was able to keep them in that game. Listen, I'm not gonna get ahead of myself. I did this last year, Keith. After they beat Bama. I actually went back and looked at that episode.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, you did. I was loud. I was loud. I said those words, that vaunted phrase that I'm not gonna utter today, Keith. But the point is that Texas is playing good ball. Stay consistent. That Georgia matchup on October 19th.
Yep.
That game right there, I didn't need to go ahead and make that a night game. I don't know, just put it 8 o'clock. Make that the prime time. Make that the bell of the ball type of game. Because if you go in there and handle that game, you might run the table.
Yep, 100%. And we know how that goes. And I think with the playoff bracket, we had to talk about that at some point. But it's I think the bye week and all of those situations, right? So you automatically put yourself in round 2 of the playoffs. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. And you can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube. Wherever you listen to podcasts, get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Guys, we're going to get into those wide receivers. Are there any movement in our top 10 list on tomorrow? We might have some Dame's dudes popping up after week 2. Let's see who gets in the club, who's got to get back in the car, go home, and try again for the following week. We're going to talk about that and more on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.